As a chef educator, I've been working with children across age groups, say from age 3 to age 18. So why is food education fundamental to your growth? Here are the reasons. One, food education sensitizes children with the importance of eating local, seasonal, farm fresh, biodiverse ingredients that are not only good for your gut, but they're also good for your planet. What does that mean? Okay, just like plants and animals, human beings are nature too. We correspond to the change in weather, to the change in climate, to calamities, to pandemics, and so on. We are dependent on our surroundings, on air, water, food, etc. Any imbalance causes disease. While coconut oil may be the thing in Kerala, maybe when you're in Punjab, you might want to have mustard oil, and maybe ghee is the right antidote for the dry, arid winters of Rajasthan. With the change in seasons, we experience a change in cuisine. And with the change in cuisine, we experience a change in our bodies. Let me give you an example. Have you heard of Navratri? 9 days of fasting for the Mother Goddess, the sacred feminine. In those 9 days, what do we really do? Essentially, we change the way we eat. Why? Because we need our bodies to acclimatize with the change in season. But not just the change in season. We also need to acclimatize to the change in the crop because the field has harvested something and now is going to grow something else. Therefore, our bodies need to acclimatize to that change. Which brings me to the point of biodiversity. Now, little technical, okay, but what is biodiversity? As per the Oxford Dictionary, biodiversity is the existence of a large number of different kinds of animals and plants which make a balanced environment. In simple words, biodiversity is the hero. It is the preserver of our soil. And the soil is the one single resource that we have to grow our food. A little more about biodiversity. Imagine if there's just one crop growing in the soil. Imagine it's just rice. Okay, and if rice is growing in the soil, it's going to deplete the soil of some nourishment because it needs that nourishment to grow. Now, in the second phase, if I grow rice again, my soil is already depleted of that nourishment. Therefore, the farmer will have to add something artificial like DDT or urea or whatever fertilizer. To balance the use of something artificial, all one needs to do is cross cultivation, which means biodiversity. Cross cultivation means growing several more kinds of crops on that same field, which support each other. So they are friends with each other, and not only do they nourish each other, they also nourish the soil. Here, we preserve the soil, we preserve the one single resource that takes millions of years to form. Another interesting point from here is that our gut, our tummies, function exactly like the field. What does that mean? Just like the field likes biodiversity, our tummies love biodiversity as well. Imagine if I serve you the same food every single day. Isn't that going to be boring? Not just for your taste, but also for your tummy, right? So exactly how the field wants cross cultivation, the field needs variety, so does your tummy. That makes it a better digester and assimilator of food. So for example, maybe you might want to have say, lovely astringent gourd vegetables in the monsoon, but you want juicy mangoes in the summer, and then you want, warm, hearty, wholesome mustard and jaggery during the winter. This, in essence, represents biodiversity. So to recapitulate this point, I'm going to say the field is the gut, and the gut is the field. So exactly how the farm functions is similar to the way your tummy functions. When we have lessons in farms, generally, I would love to have conversations with children on the labor and science that goes behind growing food. Also, to learn the basic understanding, to have a basic understanding of something as simple as you sow, so shall you reap. It doesn't hold more true than it does in a farm. To learn to deal with the unforeseen, calamities, droughts, floods, all of this can be taught through a single farm lesson. So that was my first point. Secondly, and very, very important, especially today as in the days of a huge proliferation in the food media, food education teaches children the quintessential life skill of cooking. Food education teaches children the quintessential life skill of cooking. Anybody who needs to eat needs to know how to cook. So I'm guessing all of you eat. And if all of you do, you guys need to know how to cook. Cooking is a gender neutral, absolutely important activity that you need to learn for the rest of your lives. Why? Okay, imagine at age 3, I get kids in the kitchen and they don't even know yet how to cook, but they touch ingredients, they feel ingredients, they sniff ingredients, they like some, they don't like some. And at age 3, between say ages 3 and 5, they've kind of made up their minds as to what they would like to try. If they have 20 ingredients in front of them, they're likely to try at least 10. That is biodiversity at age 3. As they grow up, we introduce kids to the finer details of cooking. We empower them with the basic understanding of how to cook and how to be safe in the kitchen. With this knowledge in hand, we empower children with basic motor skills, like sieving, pouring, sifting, and so on. When I was 8 years old, I baked my first cake with my mother. Okay. And when we were baking this cake, it's my favorite cake, by the way. It's called the marble cake. And I remember the fragrance of my childhood is the fragrance of my mother's marble cake. So every time I would come home, she would want to bake a cake with me. And she would say, Gayatri, why don't you measure it out? Okay. So at age 8, I would measure flour, butter, sugar, milk, water, and so on. I knew my cup measurements. Then she would ask me to measure them in kilograms and grams, and then ounces and pounds. So I knew my measurements by the time I was age 8. And when I hit age 12, my physics class was very, very easy. So do you understand that cooking can be related directly to other subjects in a school? In a school kitchen, the opportunity to learn, to experiment, and to correlate subjects. For example, measurements in physics coincides with cup measures and gram measures in a kitchen, is something that empowers children with practical learning and also makes learning a lot of fun. With an explosion in the food media, children are fed with varying images of food. One doesn't know how to make sense of everything, say, between food porn to food history to international cuisine and the very ethereal Michelin star. How do we draw the line between what you see on TV, what you see on, say, apps from where you order food, and then what lands up on your plate? That is something that food education can easily address. Moving on to my third point, to acquaint children. Food education helps us acquaint children with the source of all food. What is the source of all food? It's the farm. Where do carrots grow? Where is milk processed? Why are mangoes not available in the summer? Let me ask you a simple question. Where do you buy your veggies? Think about it. Where do you buy your veggies? Chances are maybe you buy them from the local push cart, or maybe you order them online, home delivery. Maybe your staff runs to get it, or maybe the slightly more adventurous ones go to the sabzi mandi to buy their veggies. As a child of 8 years old, my grandfather and I were very close. And he would take me shopping on Sundays. And every Sunday we would buy meat and vegetables and fish and fruits. And I used to think that food comes from a push cart. And when I would tell him, Dada, khana to push cart se aata hai, it comes from a push cart, he got really worried and he took me to the farm. And that's where he showed me the scale and the magnitude of the farm. He explained to me the importance of understanding season, of understanding how hard the farmer works. So over cups and cups of kullar wali chai, I understood how hard a farmer works, how much of a team effort it is to grow a simple vegetable that sometimes very easily we say, I don't like it very much. To actually get me more acquainted with something as important as farming, my grandfather would bring me back home and we would sow saplings and seeds together. We would grow our tomatoes and potatoes and coriander and mint and garlic and cucumber and so on. The sheer joy of actually seeing your first vegetable grow feels like you won a trophy. It's an unparalleled emotion. It's a win-win. When children actually go to farm during masterclass, they are taken around by the farmer themselves. Farmers conduct tours and talks and explain how they're farming, why they're farming a certain way, what are the integrated methods they are using, how farming technology is increasing, and so on and so forth. We've even gone ahead and addressed careers in farming. All of this with just several lessons in the farm, which are huge, huge fun. Okay, so moving on, my fourth point is food education also helps us delve into food history. Now, when I say food history, I don't only mean the history of the world. I mean the history of your families. I mean the history of your home. For me, my nani's rajma chawal every Saturday is a gourmet meal. I will not trade that meal with even the finest Michelin star plate. Why? Because, well, she would make it specially for me. She would roast the spices fresh and then she would pound them on a silvatta with her hands. I would be served that meal in her garden, and immediately she would pluck a red radish, wash it, and pop that on my plate with a little side of gooseberry pickle. And this for me is a meal that will probably stay with me for the rest of my life. It's a meal that I will pass on to the next generation. But not just the recipe, not just the meal, but also a story. Imagine if children were to start documenting their food histories, the histories of their families, the recipes of their families, and create databases for the progeny. So much of Indian food still remains undocumented. Imagine if every family were to do this, how much of a plethora of knowledge we'd be able to collect. Familial history creates community history. Community history creates regional history. Regional history creates country-wise history, and a country's history creates world history. But all of this world history starts in your kitchen. And that is something that food education can easily empower you to do. My last point in support of food education, and hugely important, is slightly macro. So far we've been talking micro, we've been talking very personal, but now let's look at it from the larger world perspective. As a chef that volunteers for the United Nations Chefs Manifesto, I work very closely for the Sustainable Development Goals, especially zero hunger and zero waste. It's very staggering and amazing for me to think that the world largely eats 4 basic crops, rice, wheat, maize, and potatoes. That's what the world is generally surviving on. What does this do? This depletes fields, this depletes biodiversity, this depletes indigenous crops, this depletes food history. More and more solutions are required to develop recipes, to develop plans of action, to develop calls to action, to implement healthier fields across the world. To address a subject like zero hunger, one will be shocked to think that 690 million people go to bed hungry every single day. 135 million people starve every single day across 55 countries. This is a 2019 statistic. Who has the solution for all of this? All of this is yet being researched. In our classes, when children have debates and declamations and discussions, we're constantly discussing solutions. This brings me to the point that maybe the policymakers of tomorrow, the professionals of tomorrow, are the students of today. With food education, they can help change the world. With food education, they can help impact a deeper change that helps the population in the rest of the world. In essence, and to end my talk, I'd like to add with a request that food education needs to be looked on much more holistically, much more seriously by educators, by teachers, and so on. When it comes to food, the general approach is to send the child to culinary school or to hospitality school and look at food as a career. That is fine, but that is just one small side of the story. The actual story is that we eat every day. No matter what you grow up to become, doctors, lawyers, engineers, professionals, whatever, you need to eat, and you better know how to eat, where your food comes from, and what the right choices are. All of this can be taught through food. All of this can be taught through a simple kitchen in your school. With our children constantly being fed with food adverts and with the food media, we live in a world where food is just a click away. Let's slow things down. Let's show them food exactly how it is. Farm to fork, root to shoot, barrel to glass. Thank you very much.